Well, I could not be more excited to have this guest on. I imagine she feels very vindicated today. She has been at the front lines of this issue for years, trying to get men out of women's sports because no girl should have to share a locker room or a sports team with a grown ass man, especially someone who'd been a man their whole life and then just decided willy nilly, I'm going to be a woman and I want entree and carte blanche into all of these women's spaces. This is none other than Paula Scanlan. Paula, welcome to the show. I could not be more grateful to have you, especially on a day like today with all of this news breaking. Are you feeling vindicated by what UPenn is doing, having to apologize?
I mean, I definitely am, but Link, we haven't seen the apology yet. So I'm very curious what they say. Is it going to be one of those apologies where they say something like, I'm sorry that you felt bad. I'm sorry that you felt like you were uncomfortable and that's your problem? Or is it going to say, we messed up, we were in the wrong, and we are sorry for the damage that we put you through? So I guess updates to come on that one. I'm still waiting for the apology, but someone in the comment section on my ex the other day wrote that your apology should be written in cursive on $100 bills. And honestly, I'm looking for that.
No, absolutely. You guys deserve an apology. You, Riley, all your teammates. I want to go back to the start, right? For people who might have no idea what's going on, yesterday you were at the White House with Secretary of Education McMahon. I believe you were there with Riley Gaines as well. And UPenn decided to finally capitulate what they should have done a long time ago. They're going to strip Lia Thomas of his titles. They're going to put the girls back on top, and they're actually going to respect the biological differences between men and women and not allow men in women's spaces. But tell me about the first time Lia Thomas came onto your radar when you were at UPenn.
Oh my gosh, this is a story that started actually so many years ago. So I was a sophomore. It was 2019. I was a sophomore. I was 19 years old. Our coach called a mandatory team meeting, and he invited a member of the men's team to lead this women's team meeting. And so at the time, going by William Thomas stood before the entire women's team and said, hey guys, just really quickly wanted to let you know I now identify as a woman. Please refer to me now with she, her pronouns. I'll be joining your team next season, and stay tuned, guys. I'm still picking my new name, so just keep posted on that. And this was back in 2019, and immediately I said to myself, where are the candid cameras? Is this a prank show? Is someone pulling up my prank on me? And I went online and I found that there was something on the NCAA website called the Transgender Inclusion Handbook that said if you are a man competing on any women's sports team, that you can identify as a woman, and within 1 year of taking testosterone suppressant, whatever that even is, you can join any women's sports team that you want to across D1, D2, D3. And the handbook was full of pictures of quite literally men wearing dresses, playing women's sports, saying that they're so happy. That was their evidence to why it was a good policy.
Wow. And when you spoke up at UPenn, what happened to you? I imagine you were ostracized, you were called transphobic, because that's always what they try to do. And you know, I've been talking about this issue for years. That's how you and I became connected and became friends. I've been saying this is how they silence you. You say you don't want men in women's sports. You don't want kids injected with hormones. Suddenly you're transphobic. No, you're common sense. Tell me what it was like going to class and your peers, the way they treated you at Penn.
Well, actually, for the first time ever on X yesterday, I was feeling a little bit unhinged, as they say, and I posted a text message that I actually received from one of my teammates. I'm not sure if you saw that. It was exactly that. She just said, you're disgusting, you're transphobic, how dare you have this viewpoint? That was the stance that a lot of people would publicly say. But what was so interesting is behind closed doors, you'd get to a one-on-one conversation with the same people sending those messages and out loud to the group in their classes saying they were so proud of the inclusion. They had the opposite stance. So it was a lot of cowards. And exactly to your point, I first found your page actually because one of my really liberal friends told me that she did not agree with my viewpoint, and she found your TikTok video talking about the issue. And you actually were the person that made her say, actually, Paula, I know that you probably are right on this, and I see your point because this guy Link, he's on to something here, and he presented it in a really wonderful way. So I'm grateful for you and getting some of these more insane people over onto our side, and also, you know, getting the change across and helping, you know, people see really what actually is going on here. And it's not against anyone. This is pro-woman.
Absolutely no. It's funny because I think I was the only person who looked like me, talked like me. I'm like gay with bleach blonde hair on TikTok saying we can't have men and women's sports, and I'll tell you why. It's like even Serena Williams, she spoke about if I played against, a man, I'm gonna come in like 500th. You know what I'm saying? There's just no way, even though Serena is at the top of her game, and it's not a slight to women, there are biological differences between men and women. And what's crazy is these Ivy League universities in 2025 are actually gonna have to start recognizing biology. Imagine sending your kid to a school where they can't tell you the difference between a man and a woman.
No, exactly. You know what was so funny though? So obviously, the University of Pennsylvania has a really, really good medical school. Research, they also do a lot of pediatric work, which is super important. And when the Trump administration first pulled funding from the University of Pennsylvania, okay, people were saying, you're denying their rights. You're taking away these young children's health care because Penn is such a great research center. And I responded back to one of these people and I said, guys, do you really want your top medical research institution in this country not know the difference between a man and a woman and perpetuating these lies and telling us that a man belongs on our team? And I was saying, if they can't figure that out, I don't want them having funding. I don't want them being the leading medical researcher in this country. And so I would love to see that. And I would love to see, again, Harvard, the University of Pennsylvania, a lot of these other big med schools, even NYU where you went, right? They need to know basic biological reality to be good researchers. And I think this whole thing is so interesting to me. Maybe no one at the University of Pennsylvania was even a biology major. I mean, it seems like there's not even doctors really studying in undergrad anymore. And if they are, what are they learning?
Absolutely. And I just want to go back real quick. You still to this minute have not received a formal apology from Penn, correct?
No, it was just a blanket email that they sent, one to the athletic department and then one to, I think, the entire student body, just discussing the fact that they basically come to some terms of agreement with the Trump administration.
I still think, unless they give you girls specifically a formal apology, the girls who they put through hell, ostracized, called transphobic, unless they do that, I still think the funding should be stripped. I honestly don't understand why we're funding these schools that have billions of dollars in endowment anyway, but that's a whole separate conversation. You brought up these kids in transgender procedures. I wanted to read you some more good news that happened yesterday with Stanford Medicine and get your take. So Stanford Medicine has finally decided to stop doing gender-affirming surgeries on patients younger than 19, joining Children's Hospital of Los Angeles and scaling back healthcare for transgender youth amid growing pressure from the Trump administration. Now, how are we feeling about this? I have been disgusted the last few years watching teenage girls get mastectomies, kids get sterilized, and it's the parents, I believe, who are sick, and the doctors who are radical liberals who are also sick. So isn't this another sign that we're moving in the right direction?
It is, but you know what's so funny is those same people were trying to tell us that they're not doing procedures on young children. So if you've stopped them, you were doing them. And so are they admitting that they've been doing these procedures this entire time? I mean, I don't really know what's going on here, but yes, the wins keep on going. I think we also saw the Supreme Court case in Tennessee, right, where we're having the state is able to say, yeah, we're not going to do these. And it's constitutionally correct for them to say, no, we're not going to have gender procedures in our state. It's not going to be a win, though, until all 50 states. And really, truly, this issue, yes, it was unfair for Lia Thomas to be on my team. I did not enjoy undressing with him in the locker room 18 times per week. Do not get me wrong. But the bigger issue I have with this entire situation is the whole children being transitioned. I mean, we see people like Chloe Cole. The first time I met Chloe Cole, I wanted to cry. I wanted to give her a hug. I wanted all of these different emotions because what she's gone through is nothing. I've gone through nothing compared to what Chloe's gone through. And I think that is exactly why this is so maddening. And I think people are really opening their eyes up to how insane it is when we are quite literally cutting off the healthy body parts of underaged kids.
Absolutely. And then I totally agree with what you're saying. They try and tell you this isn't happening. But when you look at the statistics, it's like hundreds and hundreds, thousands of young girls who are having mastectomies. They're being injected with hormones and the trajectory of their entire lives is being affected. And back in the day, remember we used to have like tomboys, right? You would have effeminate boys. Nobody was trying to trans them or inject them with hormones. Now, if your daughter, likes to play or is a tomboy, you take her to the doctor. The doctor might be some radical who's like, well, she's transgender. You got to get her on the hormones now. So I still think, tell me if you agree, I think the doctors who have performed these surgeries historically should be stripped of their licenses, right? If you perform a trans surgery on a minor, I do not think you should be in the medical profession because you're pretty sick.
I'd like to one up that. I think you should serve time in jail. I think that that should be equivalent to child abuse. I mean, not that they're
Hmm.
with their parents, but some form of like harming a minor. I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I don't really know. There's some, you know,
Hmm.
there's some category this falls into truly. Uh,
Right.
I mean, malpractice at the very, very least absolutely should lose their
Hmm.
license. I think they should go to prison for doing that to a
Right.
kid. Why would you ever do that? They have a pledge to do no harm, and yet they're like, we're just going to cut off the body parts of a little girl, and it's good for her.
Well, absolutely. And one thing I've been investigating, I'm still doing research on it now, and I spoke about this with Callie Means. I had Callie Means on my first episode. I'm sure you know who he is, and the audience probably knows him from the Maha movement. And he was talking about how there's this whole medical lobby that's pushing doctors to do this because they can make a lot of money, gazillions of dollars doing these surgeries, prescribing these hormones. Why don't we send, actually, if you're a doctor who has performed a trans surgery, why don't we send you to Alligator Alcatraz? Maybe that's what we can do, actually. I think we should send all these people to Alligator Alcatraz who've been performing surgeries on minors. But I want to talk to you also about being at the White House on one of the most beautiful days I've seen in American history. And I don't use that as hyperbole. The day you guys were all there for the signing of the executive order, I mean, the picture of all of you surrounding President Trump, it was so beautiful. And for years, they've tried to malign President Trump and say he's a misogynist, he's going to set women back. I feel like President Trump has protected women and women's spaces more than any president before. What do you think, Paula?
Exactly. I mean, that day was so wonderful. I mean, he did it so early on in his administration. I knew he was going to sign some type of executive order. I was like, okay, he'll call us maybe over the summer, maybe a few months,
Right.
let him handle some of the other problems in this country because there are so many he had to clean up.
Mhm.
But it was, a couple weeks into his administration, like everyone come down, we're going to sign this executive order. And he was surrounded by women. There was not a single woman that was there that was calling him a misogynist, saying all these horrible things. And the leftist media has tried to paint Donald Trump as a misogynist, as a racist, as all of these different things. And it was so funny to see just, nope, there's a group of women that aren't just standing behind him, but are genuinely grateful for his role in protecting women's rights. I mean, I don't know how the left spins that one. And honestly, even the leftist friends that I still talk to, they can say all they want about Trump, but they say, you know what, Paula, that actually was a good thing. And I am actually happy that he did that.
Absolutely. I feel like this was an issue that galvanized voters in the last election. And the left was like, oh, this is just a culture war issue. These are just culture war issues. And I'm like, the fact that girls' locker rooms are being invaded by grown ass men who are a foot taller than them, that is not just a culture war issue. It's a safety issue. And so I think President Trump was smart to lean into that on the campaign trail. And they say it's an 80-20 issue. I feel like it's 90-10, 99-1. Some people are just scared that they don't want to be called transphobic. They don't want to be called bigoted. Tell me where you think this movement goes, right? So Penn has decided to fall in line. They are going to respect biology and the differences between men and women after fighting it for years. Do you think other schools are going to follow suit across all 50 states?
I really hope so. I think we should keep pulling federal funding from any university that's doing this, but not just
Mm,
federal funding. I mean, I think we should pull, a lot of things. I think there's a lot of useless people that work at all of these institutions. I mean, when the University of Pennsylvania brought in this panel of administrators to talk to us, I was looking at these like 15 people, and I said, "What do you guys all do for work here? You're being paid over $100,000 to just sit there and tell
mm,
me I'm a transphobic bigot." I mean, that's really what they're doing. So there's a lot more that needs to be cleaned up here. But again, the Trump administration, Secretary McMahon has done a wonderful job of really doing these things. They've investigated Harvard. They've investigated a lot of these schools, not just on the transgender issue, but also on things like anti-Semitism and other wild things happening on these college campuses. I think a lot of reform needs to be made, but I will say, I don't believe this, and I know you don't believe this, but many
mhm.
people put the Ivy League institutions up on a pedestal. They think they're these amazing institutions. They look to them very highly. And I think there is a lot of value in the University of Pennsylvania and being one of those schools making this decision because other schools will say, if an Ivy League institution has to do this, maybe they're onto something and it'll make them also change their ways. So even though I don't value them that way, they still are valued in the general public. And I do think overall this is a huge win, but it's only a first step.
Absolutely. This is a first step, but is a huge step. And I just think if Kamala Harris had won in November, I mean, she wanted taxpayer funded surgeries for transgender inmates. This is not someone who is going to protect women whatsoever. She allowed the illegal migrants to come in. She has Laken Riley's blood on her hands. In my opinion, Kamala Harris does. So I'm just so grateful that President Trump won. And I know there are people who maybe didn't vote for President Trump, but they're with him on this issue. And as for you, Paula, I'm so grateful for your time. I'm sure you have a gazillion hits to go do on Fox News and CNN. You and Riley are so booked and busy. You're like Destiny's Child today, okay? You guys are the dream team, and I love you. And I'm just so, so, so grateful to know you and to have connected with you. And I'm going to keep doing what little part I can do to fight for this issue. And I know you're out there killing it. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're awesome, and you're making such a big impact, and I'm grateful to call you a friend. And what I will say, the last thing I will leave with is we can hate on Lia Thomas all we want, and the NCAA and the Ivy League and all the people who put us in this position. But if that had never happened, you and I would have never been friends. So that's a
we would
positive
have never become friends. And the last thing I will say is this, okay? We're in the golden age of America where you and I give 0 Fs anymore. Like I was thinking last night, the stuff we're just allowed to tweet and say, not worry about being canceled. You could never do that 2 or 3 years ago. Now it's like, to be a liberal, you're kind of in like the loser club. Like it's cool now to have conservative common sense values. So that's one thing I love about us. We can just like let it rip, but I'm sure I'll see you soon. You know, I don't like to leave my house too much, but I will see you soon. Thank you so much for coming on.